Hi, welcome to my channel. My name's Chance, and it is Friday, so that means it is time for some hot takes. Now, this Friday, I am going to be doing a bunch of small box two-player games. I've got in a few of these over the last couple of weeks that I have been excited to talk about. There's so many good games in this genre that it's hard to choose which ones to play sometimes. So let's get things started and kick things off with Tether. So Tether is a small box two-player card game. I think it does have a four-player mode as well, but I would say this is probably exclusively two-player. I don't know if I'd want to play this at four. I guess I should look at the rules. It just seems like it'd be weird or crazy at four players. So Tether is a game where all you're trying to do is create links of consecutive numbers. Very straightforward premise. Has some really cool art. The theme is that there's a bunch of astronauts floating in space. I don't know, maybe there was some sort of uh, tourist space cruise disaster, and now there's a bunch of astronauts just floating in space that are trying to get tethered up together, waiting for rescue or something. Uh, yeah, that makes sense. Why not? So, but the way the game works is that you're going to have a hand of cards, and those cards are kind of like the cards in Scout. So I talked about Scout in my Oink Games Roundup, and this is a game where the cards have different numbers on the top and the bottom. Now in Tether, the cards you just flip the numbers around, so they're two-digit numbers, and it's going to be like it's either a 07, so that's a 7 on the top, or 70, so 70, or you have a 68, or flip it over and it's 86. So that's the way these cards work. And I will admit this is a bit of a brain burner for me. So just understanding those cards takes a little while. Like I'll continually flip these over my hand. So it's not like Scout where you get one option to flip them. This one you can orient the cards however works for you. And your goal is just to put out those consecutive sequences of numbers. So you have a couple options on your turn. You can set cards adrift. That's a way to kind of draw cards and reset your hand a little bit. But for the most part, you're trying to create these chains. Now, you and your opponent are playing a slightly different game. So one of you is going to be trying to create vertical chains, and one of you is going to be trying to create horizontal chains. So let's say you have 68 and 69 next to each other. You can play those two cards down, and let's say I'm doing the horizontal, so I'm going to place my cards in the horizontal configuration. Now, from my opponent's point of view, they have different cards. They have, so what did I say? 68 and 67, or 68 and 69. So they would have 96 and 89. Yeah. So for them, those cards do not look consecutive. And it's kind of crazy. But so I'm playing in that horizontal plane, and they're playing in that vertical plane. They can actually play cards off of the astronauts that I have played, so they can kind of tether on there and build up larger and larger groups. You can also take these groups. So this game is a bit of a table hog because you're just throwing out these groups of astronauts and you put them wherever you want on the table. And then there's a way that you can actually link up these different groups. Like if you play a card that allows you to link up a certain group, you can link those two groups up to create this larger group of astronauts. And this brings me to how the game actually scores. So when you hit certain thresholds of card sizes or group sizes, so number of astronauts, once you hit 6, you're going to do your first round of scoring on that group. And the way the group scores is you basically look at the width by the height. So if you have, let's say, a 3x4, so you have 3 horizontal rows or 3 vertical rows and 4 horizontal columns. Let's go with that. The person going for the row. Oh my goodness! Wow. See, this is the problem with the game. It is already hard to explain. So, all right, let's say you have 3 cards within the horizontal category, and you have 4 cards tall in the vertical category. So the person going for the horizontal scores 3 points. The person going for the vertical scores 4 points. So that would be scoring for a 6 astronaut group, which I don't even think is possible with the size I just did. Oh well. But you're going to score at 6, and then you're also going to score at 10. So once you get to 10 astronauts, you're going to score again. And then once you get to 14, you score that group again. And you can score different groups, so you can score the same group multiple times, right? So and then that's going to be one of the end game triggers. Once a group hits 14 astronauts, you're just going to end the game after that because that is a pretty large group and it gets a little hard to manage at that point. Another end game condition is if there's ever a 6-point difference between the two players, there's kind of a mercy rule and the game just ends immediately. Overall, this is one of those games where I feel like there's probably a decent amount of luck with the card draw that you get on this and how the cards come out, but I don't notice the luck while I'm playing it. It's one of these games where it hurts my brain to wrap my head around this, because looking at these cards and trying to understand the game from my opponent's perspective is incredibly difficult. There's a way that you can set cards adrift, and those cards are now available for your opponent to take. And sometimes it's hard for me to be like, oh, they need this card from my hand, so I don't want to put it down, because it kind of has that, let's say, Lost Cities feel, where you have that discard where you don't want to give your opponent a card that they might be looking for. Not that it's super easy to understand what they're looking for, but yeah, it can be it can be a brain burner to just wrap your head around the game from your own perspective, and then also try to understand it from your opponent's perspective to try to prevent them from doing certain things. Um, but while I'm certain there's a luck component with this, it puts me into this space where it feels like I can solve this puzzle. It feels like there's a solution to it. Like it feels like I should be able to wrap my head around this. It's like I can almost see the Matrix, right? It's almost revealed itself to me. If I stare at it a little bit longer, I will figure it out. And I love being in that space. I love being in that space where it's just like I'm on the verge of solving this puzzle, right? So for me, this game scratches kind of this itch where it has this weird crunchiness that it's just pleasant and pleasing for me to play. But I will say that it is just a, like, it can hurt. It can hurt to play this game. So just know that going into it, that it has this weird crunch, this weird, it's like a brain twister type of thing, right? So that's going to do it for Tether. Tether, I really enjoy Tether. I'm excited to play it again. I'm happy my friend picked it up, because it's a game that I've kind of seen around. I was like, that seems like cool art, but knew nothing about it. And now I'm excited to kind of continue exploring this game. Okay, let's move on to my next game, and that is going to be Thingstead. So Thingstead is a newer game by Scott Alms, and that's kind of the reason I picked this game up, because Scott Alms has done some of the solo Button Shy series, and I've really enjoyed some of his games in that series. So I was like, oh, a two-player game by Scott Alms. This looks interesting. It has a area control element to it, and a bit of a tug-of-war vibe, kind of almost like a lane battler system. But yeah, so it had some interesting components, and I really enjoyed the two-player genre. So you know what, I decided to pick it up and give it a shot. Also, I like the theme. The theme was kind of neat. So the way this game works is that you have a council of elders, which I believe is called the Thingstead. So you have this council of elders that you're trying to influence. You're trying to win them over to your side. Now, the council of elders is set out in this circle, and you and your opponent both have player pawns on that council of elders. That player pawn kind of represents the eldermen that you are trying to influence. And it's interesting because your pawn has kind of an influence area. It's the one that is on, plus the two neighboring ones. You're also getting like a little subtle influence over those neighboring elder members. And this plays an important role in the actual gameplay of the game, and when you're trying to do that area majority part of it. Because those council elders, they have a certain threshold value on them. And once you hit that threshold with your influence tokens, you get to lock that councilman, or that elderman. So that's kind of your goal, is hitting that threshold so you can lock them and be like, that one is mine. They cannot be influenced by you anymore. I have convinced them to stay on my side. And so some of the thresholds, I think the lower one's going to be 5, the higher threshold is going to be 8. The ones with the higher thresholds are going to be worth more victory points at the end of the game, but they're harder to get during the game. One of the game end conditions is that you manage to lock down 3 of the elders, and then the game will end and you'll do scoring. Now, the the way the influence works is really cool. This is probably my favorite part of the game, because you have a hand of cards. You have a little bit of a hand management thing. The cards have suits, and then the councilman, the elderman, they have suits associated with them. So essentially, if you want to influence a councilman, you have to play a matching suit to that elder. And so you're going to play down that card. That card is going to have a movement value, so that allows you to move around the circular council ring thingstead. And you're going to do that movement, and then you're going to point that card at that councilman that you're trying to influence, and that card will tend to tell you that you get to place down some amount of influence on that elderman that you are on, and then you'll also be able to place down some amount of influence on those neighboring council members. Now, the ring that you also have this ring that you kind of spin, and this ring you're going to spin. Oh man, I hope I have a good picture this, you're going to spin it so the -2 is pointing at your opponent, because essentially this is saying that your opponent has a region of influence that they are going to kind of mitigate your influence in. So if you're too close to your opponent on that Elder Council, then essentially they will cancel out some of the influence impact that you're going to be putting down. And that can be really detrimental, but essentially it's kind of like that your opponent is kind of locking down an area of the council, and you're going to have a tougher time trying to convince that area of the council to be on your side. But same thing for you. Like if you are close to your opponent and they're trying to influence someone, like you are preventing them from putting down more and more of their influence by being close to them on that council. So you have this kind of balance of like, do you go to opposite sides of the council and kind of let each other do your own thing, or do you try to in like mitigate the influence that your opponent has by being close to them, but also harm your ability to put out influence? And that has just this really cool balance. And especially because you have a limited supply of your influence tokens, like there's a general supply, but you have to be able to get tokens from that general supply to your kind of active supply to be able to place these ones. So the positioning puzzle might play a role, or you may consider your positioning based on the number of influence that you can put down. So maybe you don't have a lot of influence you can put down. So being close to your opponent to try to prevent them from putting down their massive amount of influence that they might have available to them could be a winning strategy for you. Try to slow down your opponent while you try to get more of your supporters into your active supply. So I think that circular puzzle, probably my favorite part of the game. It has this tug of war element too. Basically, only one person can have influence on a elder at a time. So essentially, like if your opponent has influence this down, you actually have to remove theirs before you can put down any of yours. So it has just yeah, a really cool area control tug of war system going on with that Thingstead. Now I got to talk about the second part of the game where you have these clans. So you have 4 clans out there, and each one of those is going to have like a card associated with it, and you can actually take control of these clans, and those cards have some different powers that you're going to be able to use during the game. The way you and this is also how you gain supporters from those general supplies. So you're going to play a card face down into one of those clans. You immediately gain supporters. So basically, the first card you put down in a clan, you gain 4 supporters, and then every card you put down into that same clan after is going to reduce your support, because you've already been to that clan. They're like, we've heard your story. But the first card you put down, you get 4. The second card you get 3. Third card 2, and then so on. But the neat thing is that there's a little control token on each one of those clans. So when you put down a card, you actually take that control token and put it on your side of the board. And you say, I am now in control of this clan, and I get to use the power on their card. And this is something that it might influence the way you gain supporters. It might influence the way the Thingstead works for you. So it causes some asymmetry during the game if you control a clan. Now, what's cool is that so if your opponent responds and they're like, I don't want to have control of that clan, they can respond and take control back immediately of that clan if they put a card face down there. So you can kind of fight back and forth over the control of the clan. But let's say they don't. Let's say you have control of the clan on your turn. Now on your turn, you have the option, you can put down another face down card there, gain your supporters as usual, right? But if you already have control of a clan, when you do that, you actually take the clan card and put it into your tableau. It becomes a permanent upgrade for you during the game. And then there's a stack of cards for each clan, so you actually flip over the next one, and that is now the new one that you guys can fight control over of. But you end up with this permanent upgrade that you have for the remainder of the game, which it has kind of this cool thing where you're going to build out your own little asymmetric approach to influencing this Thingstead and going for those victory points. So I think it has a cool system with those clans, but this is where I have to mention that the game feels like 90% there. Like it feels like it's almost a great game. I wanted to like this so much because it had some really interesting ideas in it, but it just kind of it fell a little flat. It might be due to the end game condition that we ran into. Essentially, there's 2 main end game conditions. It's if one person locks down 3 elders, which after playing it, it seems very unlikely that is going to be the end game condition that happens. The more likely one seems to be you play all the cards in the deck. Basically, you have this draw deck. If the draw deck, basically once all players can no longer draw and your hands are empty, the game just comes to an end and you're going to do final scoring. And I find this to be it's a bit of a lackluster end of the game. It's kind of like, well, no one had any big moves that really triggered the end of the game. We just kind of pittered out at the end here, like came to a stall in the game. So I do feel like the end kind of it drags a little bit because of that. And just the clan cards, it was hard to judge the value of going for those clan cards versus putting cards in the Thingstead. It felt a little disconnected, even though there were clear ties between these two things. It just felt like it wasn't, I don't know. It felt like it needed a little more development. It felt like it needed a little more time with the development cycle. So I don't know. There's just some really cool ideas in Thingstead that I think are worth exploring, but it's not a game I would recommend seeking out just because it does feel, for some reason to me, feels a little incomplete in a way. So that's going to do it for my hot take on Thingstead. I will definitely be playing this game again. I want to give it another shot. So hope I'll be returning this game and probably doing a full review of it if I want to get a few more plays under my belt. All right, next up, let's move on to something much lighter, with a much more cuter theme, let's say. This is going to be Toy Battle. So, Toy Battle is something that I think has been getting a lot of attention. It is a very light two-player game where you are going to have the game comes with a variety of maps, but essentially you have like this home base that you're doing, and then you have these branching paths, and and these bases going out to your opponent's base. And all you're doing is laying down these tiles that will have a certain amount of power associated with them. And they're numbered like 1 to 7, plus you have a joker tile, which we'll come back to in a minute. And all you're doing is laying out these tiles, trying to move and encroach on your opponent's territory or surround certain territories to gain these stars on the map. So you only have two choices on your turn. It's either you play a tile and you activate that tile's ability and potentially the special ability on the map that you're playing on, and then the other option you have is just to draw 2 tiles from your supply and add them to your little Scrabble tile stand that you have. Add them to your hand, basically. And I think that with the simplicity of this game, it is phenomenally good. Like, it is way better than it has any right to be. I really, really enjoy Toy Battle. Every time I play it, I think it moves up on my ratings. And the whole thing comes down to the fact that so you're competing with your opponent, and one of the things that you can do is put tiles on top of your opponent's tiles. So if you have a tile, if they put down a 3, you can put down a 4 or greater on top of their tile and cover up their troop. And then they can put a tile on top of your tile. And then you have those joker tiles, which are the rubber duckies. The rubber duckies can be put on top of any tile. So if you put out a 7, which is the strongest tile in the game, someone could just drop a rubber ducky on that one and cancel out that 7. So you have this kind of cool back and forth between players. Like, the beginning of the game, you're trying to move in and maybe encroach on your opponent's territory, or you're trying to build up your hand of tiles so you can make a big move on them, because maybe you're drawing 2 tiles. You're not placing anything yet. You're getting ready for that big push into your opponent's base, and your opponent's just trying to gather those stars maybe to try to rush the end of the game. And you're like, okay, now I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do my push. I'm gonna move into your base. I got some tiles that can remove some of your tiles. Like, there's some cool special abilities you can trigger if you get the right tiles at the right time. And yeah, I think the last time I played this, ended up with a couple cases where I would make the big push into my opponent's base, because this is one of the victory conditions that I feel like is the most fun victory condition, but also the harder one to go for. And I end up getting right next to their base, and then the opponent's like, "Ooh, I got to respawn now," and now it becomes just a war of having the right tiles at the right time. So I throw down a tile, my opponent puts a tile on top of that one, cancels me out. I'm like, oh, I'm going to throw down a T-Rex, put down a 7, and it's like, okay, now what are you going to do? And then the person's like, ooh, I got a Joker. I put a Joker on the T-Rex. And I'm like, I got a second T-Rex, put a T-Rex down. And then they're like, ooh, I got a second rubber ducky. And I'm like, I'll put down a 4. Then they're like, I got a 6. And you end up with this stack of like 6 tiles in that one spot, just competing, like having this front line of the battle move towards that opponent's base over there. And then it turns into a game of just running out of tiles. It's like, oh shoot, I ran out of tiles first. Now I need to draw tiles, and now my opponent, they have the advantage because now they can make a push back out of that area, because I had to take that delay turn to draw more tiles to refill my little hand of tiles to play. So it just has this really good back and forth. It has a really good timing considerations with that do I play a tile or do I draw tiles? Like, do I need to stock up on tiles to be ready for my opponent, or do I make my push at this point to try to go for that victory condition? And then the theme that it has, I think the theme is fantastic. The toy chest, the various, you have the robot, the T-Rex, the army, the little green army man. So just a really fun, lighthearted theme. I do feel like the maps, some of them are probably going to be better than others. I don't think all of them have the same. I don't know. I don't enjoy all of them equally, but I think I'm happy to play on any of the maps. Now, Toy Battle is very simple, very light. It is one that I am going to be happy to play anytime my friend pulls it out. I'm really happy that he got it, and we can continue playing Toy Battle. Okay, so that's going to do it for Toy Battle. Let's move on to a newer one that I just purchased. This is going to be Lone Wolves. So Lone Wolves is one I knew very little about. I would say that I have just gotten interested into lane battlers recently, and I saw Lone Wolves pop up on Shut Up and Sit Down's new series of, I'm just going to call them like board game ads. I don't know. Not my favorite series, but it's kind of neat hearing about the new games coming out. So yeah, it's love it and hate it. But either way, they mentioned this game, and I was like, sounds interesting. So I looked it up. I was like, oh, it's a lane battler. I'm going to buy it and give it a shot. And then after reading the rules, I found out that, oh, it's a lane battler plus trick taker. Even better. I like both of those things. So I got this one played just a few days ago, and I absolutely loved it. I thought this was a really, really good game. The way it works is that you have these lanes out, basically the different suits of the cards. Now you have, so I think 5 suits. The cards are going to be numbered 2 to 7, and your goal is just to end up with the most power in a lane to take the honor token. So these honor tokens are double-sided. You're going to randomly assign them to the 5 territories at the beginning of the game, and also randomly determine what side is up, because essentially maybe one side is a 7, the other side's a 12, which is a pretty big difference in the amount of points you can get from winning a lane. So, but the other thing that's going to go into those territories is in the center is going to be these 3 scar tokens, 1 face up, 2 face down. And those scar tokens are super interesting because they are kind of like modifiers. They can be strength modifiers or just scoring modifiers to a lane. So over the course of the game, players are going to be, well, the 2 players, they're going to be collecting those scar tokens, moving them to their side of the board into territories that they want to put them in. Maybe it's going to be like +1 power per card you have in that lane. Maybe it's going to be +2 honor, which is the victory points, per lone wolf you have in that lane. And we'll talk about those lone wolves in a second here. So it just has a really cool system with those card tokens and those territories that you're competing over. So the way the game is going to work, it is a very standard fare trick taker. Basically, lead player is going to play a card into a territory, and then the opponent must follow the suit if they can. And so standard trick taker stuff, but they do not have to play their card into the same territory that the lead player did, so they get their choice of playing into a different territory if they want. Now, the winner of the trick, they're just going to maintain the lead, and they get to leave their card face up. They get basically, they're going to have that power at the end of the game of whatever card they played. Now, the loser, though, gets to do the interesting thing. So the loser of the trick, they actually flip their card face down, and they lose the power on top, and it becomes a 1. So the backside of every card is a 1. It is a lone wolf, so it's going to have 1 power in that region. But they also get to take a scar token from that territory. They're going to take that scar token, and they get to place that scar token into any of the territories on their side of the board. So like I said, these can be power modifiers. They can be point multipliers, basically. Maybe they're going heavy on that lone wolf strategy. There's a tile in there. There's a scar token in there. There's actually a couple scar tokens in there that give you 2 points per lone wolf. So you can actually load up a column with lone wolves and score a boatload of points by just losing tricks. And I think this is where the game kind of shines. So I find trick takers do best when you have you want to balance that win and loss, right? You don't want to make it so if someone just wins all the tricks, then they do great in the game, because then you have to play multiple rounds to kind of balance out the luck of the draw in the game. Now, Lone Wolves, I think, balances this out by 1, having benefit for the winner and the loser of the trick, and then 2, having 13 cards in your hand. So I think having a 13 card hand kind of mitigates the possibility of having just a garbage hand. It's still possible, but it could happen. So just let's say my nitpick of this is that that 13 card hand, that's a lot of cards to think about for a trick taker. So in the early phase, it might be a little difficult. I think the first maybe play or two of this game, it's gonna be hard to figure out how to have a good opening play. I find that it's usually easier when you have a smaller hand of cards in a trick taker, like get down to 7, and that becomes a little more manageable. But yeah, so 13 cards is kind of a lot to think about with that opening play. So usually you're just feeling each other out and playing some cards in the beginning. Now, the other thing that is really cool about this, and I think is kind of interesting with those 13 cards, is how Trump gets declared. Because essentially, there's no Trump in the beginning of the game until one of the territories has been cleared of the Scar tokens. So essentially, to clear a territory of Scar tokens, you need to have someone lose in that territory 3 times to be able to collect those Scar tokens. And then there's a Moon token that comes out, which also adds points to that territory. So that territory that runs out of Scar tokens becomes even more valuable to win. And the Trump is now declared for the suit of that territory. Now, this is really cool because you can kind of design or kind of weed yourself into setting the Trump that is going to be most beneficial for you. Maybe you're like, "Ooh, I'm going to try to lose early on this yellow or this black territory, let's say, because I have a bunch of black cards here. If I can get those to be Trump, I can then get myself into a spot where I can get a lot of victories and have a lot of power in these territories." So I think it's really cool that you can kind of look at your hand and be like, "Oh, I'd like this card to be Trump," and then you can kind of design that to happen during the game. You can work your ways towards making that happen. So I think the control that players have over that is just a really fascinating aspect of Lone Wolves. Now, the last part that I already hinted at this and talked about this, but I just love that the loser of the trick taker gets to do something, and they actually get to do the thing that I find more interesting. Like the leader, the person winning the trick, sure, they have the more powerful wolf, but the loser is the one that gets to take that Scar token. They get to determine how fast those Scar tokens are depleted from an area. They might be the ones that are going to be setting the Trump if they're losing often enough. So I think that it gives players a good amount of control over the game by balancing that winning and losing condition with these lone wolves, or with those wolf cards. Yeah, so this is one that I am I'm very like enamored with. I'm very excited to continue playing this. I am curious if it is going to hold up over a lot of repeated plays. Right now, it just seems super interesting to me. It's unique in the category. It's got this, trick takers with the twist. They're all over the place these days, but I think this one it landed for me. It hooked me, and I am interested in getting this one back to the table. So yeah, I do recommend Lone Wolves right now, but yeah, I do want to get more plays before I kind of say that yes, this is going to hold up long term for me. All right, so that's going to do it for Lone Wolves. So let's move on to my final game for my hot takes today. This is going to be a newer one that was just released, and this is going to be Duel for Cardia. I'm just going to state that I kind of hate this name. this weird, I don't know, is it a pun? I don't like the name of this game. Also, the art seems kind of generic, but so I remember seeing it on BGG's Hotness, and I was like, that just sounds weird, looks weird. I don't know. It just didn't catch my eye. But once again, I got a friend that likes buying these 2-player games, so he picked it up, and I was like, cool, I'm willing to give this a shot. I know nothing about this. Let's see how this works out. I'm so happy you bought this because, yeah, this is another great little 2-player game. I love having these little small 2-player card games. Like I just reviewed Slambo. I talked about how Slambo is kind of this luck-heavy 2-player dueling game that I really, really enjoy. I really enjoy bringing that one out. And then I think Duel for Cardia is going to land in this category. Not as much luck-based, which is probably a good thing for a lot of people, but it is just this light 2-player game that comes in a tiny box. You can take it with you anywhere and play a quick round of this game and have a good time. Now, the way this game works is that players are going to have, we only played the basic version. There are some variants in the game, like there's an advanced deck and like location cards, but essentially the basic form of the game is that players are going to have a 16-card deck. They are going to be the exact same 16 cards. They're numbered 1 to 16. Each one of the cards has a different power on listed on the card. And on your so you're going to have it start out with a hand of 5 cards. So draw from your 16, shuffle it up, draw 5 cards, and then players are both going to put a card face down on the table. Then once players have both selected a card, you reveal it. The player with the higher card wins the duel. So they gain basically a victory point token onto that card, and then the loser gets to activate their ability. So it's kind of like Lone Wolves, where I feel like the loser gets to do the interesting thing in the game. But I mean, the winner is still they're winning the battles, and that is the victory condition. Is you need to win more of those battles. So collecting those victory tokens is kind of the point of the game. But activating those abilities is so much fun. It is the interesting part of the game is to activate those abilities and do something interesting, right? So there's various abilities in the game. There are some that are going to be kind of an instant ability. Maybe it's just like, oh, this battle, we tie immediately. I think the 4 card is just, it says, we tie this battle. So even if the other player played their 16, it's just like, yep, we tied. You didn't win this one. No one gets a victory point token. Now, what's interesting about this is that you can actually influence previous battles by triggering abilities of your cards. So there's some cards that'll be like, oh, subtract 3 power from previous battle or from another card and add 3 power to another card. So you can completely flip 2 battles on the table in your favor if you manage to trigger that ability. Now, the cards are balanced in a way where the higher powered cards, so like those ones getting into the teens or whatever, right? Like the 10, the double digits, those ones are you're more likely to win battles with those, so you're less likely to trigger the abilities, but the abilities are more powerful for those cards. Like the 16 just says that like if you trigger the 16's ability, you just win the game. Like it's like, yeah, that one should be almost impossible to trigger, but you will win the game if you do it. So and there's a card that if you trigger it, I think it's like maybe the 10 or something, it says that your next battle, your card has like -5 power. So that can be a way you trigger your 16. And that's something that your opponent has to weigh against. Like if you play that one where you get to trigger that ability and it says your next card has -5 power, now your opponent has to wonder, do you have your 16? Are you going to play your 16? And it's going to be an 11 during this battle. So that puts me at risk. If I play one of my higher cards to win this battle, you could just win immediately. So it has this kind of double think to it. Of what your opponent is going to be doing, what your opponent's trying to do. Then there's other interesting cards, like I think, oh man, the 14 just says that if you lose this battle, you get to trigger an ability of a card on your side that has an equal or higher value than the 14. So if you have your 16 out there and you manage to lose with the 14, you can just trigger your 16 and win the game. So it's definitely this little chaotic card dueling game. I love the simultaneous selection. There's a game that is reminding me of that. It's just blanking on my mind right now. But yeah, I do love the simultaneous selection, revealing. I love the fact that yes, if you win the battle, you work yourself towards those victory conditions, kind of like Lone Wolves, where like, yeah, you won, good for you, you have more power, yay. But then the loser gets to do the fun part of the game and trigger that ability. And I think this is why I keep losing the game, is because I always want to trigger the ability. So I'm like always losing the battles, and then I forget that I'm going for victory points. So so yeah, Duel for Cardia is one that I am excited to kind of continue playing. This is a very light one, so it's not one that I'm going to be like, hey, let's play Duel for Cardia tonight. It's probably going to be one of those ones that, like, if I'm at a coffee shop on a brewery, like, hey, bring Duel for Cardia. I'd love to play that today. Okay, so that's going to do it for my review of these small box 2-player games. As always, I want to do a quick wrap up of these. So I talked about Tether. Tether is a bit of a brain burner. It is a very interesting, unique game that probably is pretty luck heavy, but it makes me feel like I can solve it. I feel so close to being able to solve Tether when I play it. It is definitely a table hog though, and it's just unique in the space. I think it just so different. I really like Tether. Thingstead had some interesting things going on in it, but I felt like it was a little incomplete. Like it felt like it was so close to being a great game, but kind of just missed the mark for me. Toy Battle, I agree with everybody else out there. Toy Battle's great. It's fantastic. It's just a joy to play. It's a very light game, but very entertaining to play. I enjoy every game of Toy Battle that I play. Lone Wolves, I would say, is the surprise hit of this one. It is the Trick Taker Lane Battler. I had almost no expectations for it, and I've been kind of blown away with it. I love the fact that the winner, like the winner and loser, are both doing something interesting. Like winning the trick is awesome because then you get a lot of power in that lane, but losing the trick is awesome because then you get to use one of those scar tokens. So I find, and it seems like it's so far been pretty balanced in my plays of it. I'm interested to see if it holds up over, well, let's say, lots and lots of plays. Like I would expect a Trick Taker to do, right? But yeah, Lone Wolves, I'm very excited to revisit. It is one that I'm very happy to have purchased at this point. Duel for Cardia, super light game, super easy. I love the simultaneous selection and just the simplicity of it. This is one that I think my friend and we can just pull out at any time if we're out and about. We can just play a quick round of Duel for Cardia, and I'm going to have a good time with it. It's not, I'm not going to say this game has blown me away by any means, but you know, if you are someone that needs more of those two-player light games to add some variety to your life, I think you can't go wrong for Duel for Cardia. That is going to do it for my hot takes this Friday. So, yep, as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for spending your time with me. I appreciate it, and I will talk to you next time.